everybody. Okay.
I had to put a reminder a little bit.
What's the matter with yours?
Did it ask you to sign in?
If I log in as the right account, it'll let me in.
I had to log into my Google Drive.
Hmm?
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Where we go back?
There are too many Google accounts in here.
I'm going to call the meeting to order. I would like for Reverend Mark Massey to come to the podium for the invocation, please.
Thank you for allowing me this space. We bow our heads. Father God, we thank you once again, God, for the congregating here of your people. God, we pray your presence be amongst us. Allow your spirit to move through these hollowed walls, through these corridors of these offices. Father, we pray that you just have your way today. Touch the hearts and the minds of your people today. Bring us all together on one accord. Continue to bless this city council meeting. Bless all these constituents, God. We pray for them. Continue to look over those who protect us on each and every day, God. God, continue to strengthen our communities, bless our children, and just have your way on today. We thank you now in advance. In Jesus' name we pray, and we all say amen.
Thank you.
God bless you.
And now I'll ask Lauren to do the
Pledge.
pledge.
Join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, we need to set the agenda, and I have one change. We're going to move, the police department is receiving a grant tonight, and I'm moving that to number 2 in the presentations. And if anybody else has anything. Okay, then I need a motion. Motion by Christina Polish and second by Councilwoman Lauren Schumacher. Thank you. All in favor? Y'all please bear with me. Okay. The consent agenda, there are 10 items. Do we have any changes? Okay, hearing none, I need a motion. Motion by Councilmember David Moore, second by Jeff Meadows. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, we're going to move on to the presentations, and it's Eagle Scout Project. I'm going to call Mark Jusko up.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. I have with me tonight Ms. Amelia Hill Pfeffer. She reached out to us earlier this spring about doing the Eagle Scout project at River Street Park. The project would be to build a porch swing for park goers to enjoy. We took this information to the Parks and Recreation Commission at their June 27th meeting, and they unanimously recommended this to go to City Council. So I'm going to turn over to Ms. Hill Pfeffer now to give it some more information.
Good evening. My name is Amelia Hill Pfeffer. I'm in the Boy Scouts of America in Troop 70, and I'm here to talk to you about my Eagle Scout project. I was looking to build a outdoor porch swing at River Street Park down by the lake. I realized that there's already a porch swing down there, but I thought it'd be lovely to have one down by the lake just for relaxation. And yeah. So I'm hoping to get my porch swing down by there, by the lake, and yeah. Do you guys have any questions?
Go ahead.
Where are you gonna put the porch swing? On the riverside or down by the playground or?
Yeah.
It'll be close to the river. We have to pick a final location.
I got you. And do
Yeah.
you have a timeline when you think you'll be done with the project?
Yeah, so as soon as I'm done with this meeting and I hopefully get the approval, I have to actually go to Boy Scouts and get their approval also. So hopefully within the next few months I can get this project done.
Wonderful.
And she made a great presentation to the Recreation Commission and with photos and, you know, the dimensions of the swing and all that, so she did a really good job of that.
She really did.
If you guys would like pictures or a map of where it would be, or a picture of the swing that I would be creating, I have them here.
We get, I think we got it.
Okay.
Yeah, we have it.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Does council want to take action? Councilmember Meadows,
Move approval.
Second.
all in favor? All opposed? Then the motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have a presentation of a donation from Miss Mount Holly to the MHAA. Oh, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. I said I moved the police up to number 2.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor Pro Tem and Council. We have Miranda Kovacs here tonight. So on May the 25th, the K-9 unit from the police department entered into a community outreach program for a potential grant. We showcased our K-9 unit. I know several of the council members was nice enough to go in and vote for us on a daily basis. So we found out shortly after June the 5th that we were awarded a grant, and I'll let Ms. Kovacs speak to that.
Hi guys, hope you guys are all doing okay today. I didn't prepare a speech, so it won't be long, but my name is Miranda. I'm here on behalf of Aftermath Services. We do crime scene cleanup as well as remediation of any biohazards such as like blood, urine, feces, anything like that sorts. We do K-9 grants because we like to get back to the community. So I want to thank you all for participating. It takes a community effort to be able to get this kind of money out. I hope you guys win even bigger next year, but this is us, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Can we get a picture, please?
Yes.
Do we have someone to take a picture?
Don't everybody jump up at once. Thank you. Okay, now, Miss Mount Holly, you can come up here.
Hey everyone, my name is Jamie Logan, and I've had the incredible privilege to serve as Miss Mount Holly this year. So I was looking for a lot of ways to give back to my community, and the biggest thing that I wanted to give back to was our athletic program. So along with being an 8U soccer coach, I held a sneaker drive, so new and used sneakers were donated to a company who ultimately compensated for each pair of sneakers donated. And I set a goal of 50, not knowing, this was when I first became Miss Mount Holly, not knowing how awesome the Mount Holly community was. I got 175 pairs of sneakers, which was incredible. So again, all of that got donated to a company, and in turn, I got $438 that I will now give to the Mount Holly Athletic Association.
Could we get a picture? Mark, would you take a picture, please?
Marty, do you
We
wanna say
appreciate everybody that gives to us. I talked to Jamie the last time we had a meeting here. She approached us, we talked about it, and we were really appreciative of everything that we get. And again, to her point, everything that we get goes straight back into the community, and I think that was one of the things that she really wanted to know about. The other part of this was she had spoke about sponsoring kids that were not financially able to do that. So this was just going to be pigeonholed for that reason alone. So thank you again.
And we thank you for all that you do for the city of Mount Holly. Now, if the council will join me down front, Councilmember Moore is going to do the next presentation.
Okay, I'm going to ask Reese Williams to come up, Teen Miss Mount Holly. And I want her just to talk a little bit about her year as Miss Mount Holly and all of her community service that she did. If you'll do that for us.
Alrighty, good evening, y'all. It is a wonderful night to be out here. So yes, my year started the first night I won. I was entering a pageant to make memories, learn more about myself, find the confidence that I never knew I could have. I met so many amazing people: Jamie Logan, David Moore, this amazing city council. I have lived in Mount Holly my entire life. I've grown up here. My roots are here. My family's here. Everything I've ever known is here. And so to get to be here and serve as Miss Mount Holly's teen, it has been an absolute dream. It's something that I never thought would be able to, come true. And then I got to compete on the Miss North Carolina stage, competing for Miss North Carolina's teen 2 weeks ago. A dream of a lifetime once again. It's something that you can't ever really talk about. I get emotional talking about it because it's just like, I never thought I would be here talking to you guys, being with David. So my community service initiative was called Charlie's Angels. It was prevention and awareness resources on shaken baby syndrome. So I got to talk to pediatricians. I got to talk to daycare owners and workers, staff, faculty, everything on that kind of sort, and got to learn their background with shaken baby syndrome. My goal was to spread awareness on it and protect our community, and really reach out through everybody. So it has been amazing, and I just want to thank you all so much for this opportunity.
So an exceptional young lady here, and it's been a great year. I have a daughter sitting back here in the audience, but it seems like, every year I have 2 more daughters that come in. And sometimes you just don't want to let go of them. They just become part of you. And it's such a thrill, it's such a great opportunity to be able to work with these young ladies every year. So on behalf of our city councilor, our mayor, our citizens, I would like to present you with this key to the city for all your great efforts and this wonderful year that you've had representing the city of Mount Holly.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So if you want to go and take it one time.
Okay.
I'll get her. Reese, and if you'll just hang around up here for we can do separate pictures, then we can do them all together. Okay. Okay, Miss Jamie Logan, our 2023 Miss Mount Holly. If you'll tell everybody about your wonderful year and everything that you did.
Yes, so I kind of shared a little bit. The biggest thing that I'm so proud of was my work being an 8U soccer coach. I don't have an 8-year-old, so coaching 10 other 8-year-olds for a season, it was tough. So anyone who has an 8-year-old, I'm sending so much love to you. But I had a great year. I got to do a lot of really cool things. And again, this is one of those experiences, if you've never been a part of it, it's so hard to understand from the outside. And I had no idea what I was getting myself into. But here, 9 months later, I look back on one of the best years of my life. So thank you guys for all that you do. Mount Holly is so much more than just a name that I'm wearing across my chest. Like, this is where I want to buy my first home, where I want to raise my family when I have a family. Like, this is now home to me, and it's crazy to think 2 years ago, 6 years ago, like, I didn't know where Mount Holly was, and now I can't imagine my life without it. So thank you guys for everything you do for Mount Holly.
Thank you, Jamie, and again, thank you for all that you've done this year and all the events that you attended, pageants all over the state representing our city. It's just been a great year just to get to know you. And Reese, and I just can't put it all into words. It's just been wonderful. These two ladies have bonded so miraculously. It's just, I know that one's going to be she'll be in your wedding, you'll be in her wedding. I mean, that's just where they I think for the most part, Jamie would just go to Reese's house and just walk in the front door and say, "I'm here, family." Yeah. So, I mean, it was, it just a special year for these young ladies. So again, I would like to present you with this key to the city on behalf of our mayor, our city council, all of our citizens, for all the hard work and effort you've done throughout this year. Thank you so much. Jamie. Being a soccer coach and a Miss Mount Holly has never ever happened. And I've been involved with this for over 40 years, and it's just awesome that she did that and had to deal with some of the refs and all the. She's very, very competitive. So, but anyway, it's been a great year. Thank you.
Okay. We have anybody signed up or not yet? We have anybody signed up? Who's got them? You don't need to go. Okay. Chief, are you bringing the sheets up? Our next item is calling for a public hearing for review and recommendation to the City Council to consider an application submitted by True Homes. Okay. I need a motion to go into the public hearing. Motion made by Councilwoman Polish and second by Councilwoman Shoemaker. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. No. Now, nobody signed up for the public hearing, so we need to close the. Huh? During the public hearing? Okay.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Temp. Staff received a rezoning request from True Homes regarding the Moreland Oaks subdivision. These parcels were originally rezoned and annexed into the city in 2019 for up to 138 homes. The current rezoning request is to add 3 additional lots to the development, bringing the total lot count to 141. The additional lots will be provided within the existing development, and the remaining zoning conditions that were approved in 2019 will remain the same. Planning Commission voted unanimously to approve this rezoning during their meeting last week, and a representative from True Homes is here to answer any questions that you may have.
Does council have any questions?
So there's been 3 lots added. There was an original conditional zoning put in place. What was the change other than the 3 lots being added? Because usually there's a balance between the conditional zoning and the development rights that are
correct.
Given. So what was the addition to the plan?
They're adding those 3 lots within common open space. The amount of common open space that is required will still be met with these additional 3 lots. That amount may better be answered by the representative, but I do know it's from the common open space.
Thanks, Brandon. Members of the council, for the record, my name is Sean Gasparini. I'm here tonight on behalf of True Homes. Our corporate address is 2649 Breckenridge Center Drive. We're down in Monroe, North Carolina. I think I understand your question, Councilman. You're suggesting a trade-off. There were no additional conditions offered at this time. What happened as we began site construction, if you've been by the site, phase 1's already on the ground. The model home's gone vertical. We're getting ready to open it. We're just waiting on power, which is imminent. Phase 2 is underway. We get into phase 3 and we uncover a tremendous amount of rock and what we call in our business unsuitable soils, basically materials that's not usable on site. So we've got to undercut or remove that material, haul it off site, and bring clean or good material onto the site to facilitate development and to achieve a proper compaction and a proper final product. The cost associated with this is astronomical, and we're talking pushing $1 million. So in an effort to balance the project, if you will, to recoup a small percentage of that cost, we pushed our engineers, the guys over at DPR Design, to look at the overall layout and see, hey, what can be done, guys? this is what they came back to us with. They thought that they could achieve 3 additional lots. Wasn't ideal from our perspective, but it was the best that could be done on the site. We still more than meet the common open space requirements. As Brandon noted, the required common open space is 5.95 acres. What had previously been approved, we were at 28.5 acres, so we far exceeded the 5.95. And the plan that's before you this evening still achieves 27.67 acres of open space. So we're still well above the required 5.95 acres. But to answer your question specifically, Councilman, no, there were no additional considerations given.
Go ahead.
So while I don't have any intention of standing in the way of this moving forward, I'm a little concerned. I apologize to staff for not raising this in advance, but the whole point of a conditional rezoning is that there's a balance struck in the beginning. And I was in the development business. I understand the challenges we find, but it's really not a concern from a policy standpoint. So from where I sit, once you make a deal and you've struck a balance, if you change that deal by providing you with more development rights, something should have been added to the development other than just helping you out financially. I think that's a bad precedent personally. So with that, I would, if anybody else has nothing else to add, I would move approval.
We got to go out of the public hearing. I need a motion to come out of the public hearing. Councilwoman Shoemaker and second, Councilwoman Polish. All in favor? Motion carries. Jeff?
Move approval.
Second.
Approval by Councilmember Meadows and second by Councilwoman Shoemaker. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, we need to go into another public hearing for a proposed text amendment to permit lounges to operate in the B1 Central Business District with certain conditions. Councilwoman Shoemaker, motion? Okay. Second, Christina Polish. All in favor? We're
Thank
now
you.
in the public hearing.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you, Council. This proposed application was put in by Billy Brick, and if approved, it would permit lounges in the B1 district with certain conditions. Lounges are defined as establishments that sell alcohol that's not produced on site that have an active ABC permit. The conditions are lounges are unable to stay open after 12 midnight. There's a minimum separation requirement of 50 feet between churches, schools, and residences. And then there's also outdoor events and storage is prohibited. The Planning Commission looked at this case in July and recommended approval. Staff recommends approval. The applicant is also here if there's any questions, and I also can answer any questions.
Council have any questions? Councilmember Moore?
Is there any food served at these lounges? Is that part of any of the?
Yeah, there could be food service and events at this at these particular uses, and build on that. We kind of taken it out from lounges was under dance clubs and clubs functionally, and we're bringing it out and as its own use. But yes, they could have food service. They would have to go through the county.
Okay. All right.
Councilmember Meadows?
I'd like to move approval. I think this is a good move to help with our downtown and economic development.
Do you want to go out of the public
Yeah,
hearing
we got to
first?
go out of the public hearing first. I need a motion to go out of public hearing. Councilmember Shoemaker, I need a second. Councilmember Meadows, all in favor? Any opposed? Any discussion?
I have a question.
Okay.
Is there any issue with the address and the church? I mean, it says within, I don't know, I'm not a great, I don't know what 50 feet is. Isn't it like right across the street from a church?
Well, this particular location meets the standard, but then going forward, each additional location would have to meet the standard. And so they're looking at just one particular property at this moment, but the scenario is if this gets passed, it'll be the whole B1 district, and then any future lounges would have to meet all these standards as well.
Does council wish to take action? Councilmember Meadows made a motion to approve, and second by Christina Polish. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. We're good? Are we going to take a 5-minute break? Huh?
Oh, okay.
What?
Oh, you were standing there waiting for the next one because he's the next one on the line, but if you want to take a break, go ahead.
Who's a public comment?
Public comment. That's public comment. There's nothing, nobody signed up, so we're going to take a 5-minute break.
All right.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm a nervous wreck.
You're keeping it going.
Well, that's the main thing.
Exactly.
Keeping it going.
I need to do this.
Bye, Billy.
should be out of here soon, right?
Yeah. Well, we are.
Well, I know that, but I know that.
You kiss a death when you say something.
Well, it'll be all right.
Okay. So who's doing this? Paul Lowe. Right, is that it? Is that it? Go ahead. Let's just do it. So, this is approval of the city's mural policy, right? That's next.
Yes.
That's gonna be Paul Lowe. Okay, our next item is new business. I'm gonna call Paul Lowe up. Approval of the city mural policy.
Thank you, ma'am. This policy is a vision goal or a plan in our vision plan. Or, if I could use my words, it's a goal in our vision plan. But also PAC, the Public Arts Advisory Commission, they had reviewed this policy over a number of months, and they looked at it at their June meeting, and they recommended approval to City Council. So this policy would address both publicly funded murals and murals that are on public facilities, but also look after and regulate private murals on private property that is in the view shed. So the public view shed is any mural or any structure that is in the public view shed, so that's visible from a public street, a right-of-way, a greenway. And then from the a review and approval process, the publicly funded projects, they more thorough process, more stringent process. It's a 10-step process from application to approval, versus a privately funded project would only have 2 steps and is more streamlined. And the reason why we are looking at private projects to regulate them, the scenario is we're not trying to stifle creative freedom or property rights, et cetera, but this was a concern that came out of the discussions over the course of a couple months from PAC, which is also shared by staff, is that if we don't have any regulations, any policies to regulate this use, any mural, any design, any content can be approved. And if you don't have any content or any regulations about content, then anything gets approved. Like functionally, we recently had another mural going downtown. It wasn't controversial. It was an octopus. But that one, but we had to approve exactly what it was, the height, the area, because we didn't have anything to regulate it. So what we're trying to do and trying to get around is something that is, blatantly offensive or blatantly in poor taste, or something that someone's just trying to stir the pot, et cetera, or something that would be, if it was implemented, it would make us, it would be a controversy or could put the city in a bad light. So in closing, this policy, it was approved by PAC, it's recommended by staff. It would give baseline regulations for private funded projects, and also it gives structure to both review types. So again, staff recommends approval, and I can answer any questions.
Does council have any questions? Councilmember Meadows?
I just have a question for our attorney. I don't know if you're going to answer on the spot or not, but once you have a policy in place, how does that balance some of your First Amendment rights? She's talking about private property, and that is there any case law or any concerns going into that, or does having a policy allow us to not have to worry about that kind of a challenge?
No, I think that's an important question, and local government cannot circumvent First Amendment regulations being federal. That being said, the policy as written did not make any attempt to regulate content the way I read it. You can correct me if I'm wrong. So I see that the PAC would probably have the same rights to regulate as local government itself. So time, place, and manner, hate speech, things of that nature.
I won't go into the details, but I remember seeing recent case that went on someone's roof that they claimed was First Amendment, and it was pretty ugly. So I didn't know if that helps us avoid some of that or gives us the ability to address some of that. I mean, I love our arts community and all that we've done so far. It's been very tasteful, and my prayer is that it stays that way. But my concern is that what happens when it doesn't. I was hoping maybe this provides us an avenue to address that potential liability.
I think that there is a small avenue in that the requirement, the regulation requirement is that it come before PAC to look at and votes on whether or not to recommend for approval before the city council. I would think that their abilities to disapprove would be limited, in the same way that local government would be limited when you're looking at free speech. But certainly something like hate speech, something along those lines, would be fine to disapprove. Go ahead.
So the other question I had is there any relation to the sign ordinance as far as size, location, visibility triangles, any of those kind of technical elements with the sign ordinance, or is it totally separate?
Well, it would be separate, but the scenario is, and that's why we would have this review process to see if it is a sign or if it is a piece of art.
Good.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Does council wish to take action?
I'll move approval.
Motion by Councilmember Meadows and second by David Moore. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Okay, the next item is consideration and approval of Dutchman's Creek Blueway Study. Greg Beal.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you, Council. Over the past few months, we've been working on the Dutchman's Creek Blueway feasibility study with our consultant, McAdams, and I'm going to turn it over to Nick Lowe, but at the completion of his presentation, we asked that Council adopt. The staff recommendation is to adopt the study. We had a great participation group, local business owners, and Duke Energy, which is the regulatory agency. Sometimes difficult working through all their regulations, but we found a path forward, and we think it's a very good plan. So with that being said, I will turn it over to Nick Lowe with McAdams.
So good evening. I know that this is a long document that y'all have seen it. We're going to hit some of the highlights from it, and thank you for having me and letting me present. So what we're going to go review is just the project overview, what we were doing and some of the goals we were trying to accomplish. And then we did look at some of the previous planning efforts because this Blueway study was part and did come from some of those planning efforts. And then we'll look at the existing conditions of Dutchman's Creek, and then that kind of outlined what our recommendations would be. And I'll also explain some rules from Duke Energy that really gave us our parameters of what we actually could do on Dutchman's Creek. And then we'll look at the implementation and action plan and then answer any questions. So project overview, so it focuses on a 2-mile section of Dutchman's Creek. We actually paddled the creek, and we went up as far as was, I guess, navigable by a kayak without getting out and it being dangerous. So you can only go about 2 miles up that section. We also looked at this corridor because there's a lot of business development happening along. But then you can also see Dutchman's is highlighted in white, and it's a part of a larger system with the Catawba, which will bring us to some other things we'll talk about with the FERC boundary and Duke's regulation. So this did come from the strategic vision plan. It was a goal to coordinate connections with adjacent uses. As you'll see in the map, there's a lot of businesses popping up on Dutchman's Creek, which really provides an opportunity for a great paddle tour. But also to create a pedestrian connection between North Main and the community garden, so looking at greenway connections along with this Blueway connection, and then begin planning process for the Woodlawn Mill. So this has been kind of an extension of that to try to connect. But then also some other previous planning studies we looked at. There's a Dutchman's Creek Greenway plan, the Plan Mount Holly Parks and Rec plan, and then the Plan Mount Holly future land use plan. So we looked at all these to see where the Dutchman's Creek Blueway would kind of fit in and looked at its feasibility. So our goals were to revitalize Dutchman's Creek as an inviting space for people and establish a stronger connection between the public and water. So looking at this as a marketing opportunity to get people coming to Mount Holly and actually paddle this Blueway along with the Catawba, and then to preserve natural and historical features, and then create a distinctive water-based recreation destination. Again, looking at bringing people into Mount Holly to come paddle this Blueway Trail, but then also leverage public-private development partnerships to encourage a wide range of recreational uses. So we'll talk about that a little bit more, where we're positioning some of our kayak launches and taking people up Dutchman's Creek. There's lots of opportunities with local business. And then we want to integrate effective Blueway branding and wayfinding. Greg will talk a little bit more about the wayfinding, but we feel like some of that wayfinding could fold in with this project to direct people towards the Blueway. So existing conditions, if you look at number 15, that's where the existing Aquatic Adventures is right now. They're an actual kayak business that rents kayaks, and we actually rented some of their kayaks and paddled up Dutchman's Creek. And looking up the creek, there is a Duke kayak launch, and then just adjacent is the Old Meck Brewery site, which is just above, and then crossing under the railroad track is River Street Park. And then you zigzag up through Dutchman's Creek, and about as far as it's navigable, you probably can't get to West Nims Avenue Future Park, but you can get to Woodlawn Mill. So that's about the end of where we would think that the Blueway would go. And then just some landmarks along the way. One that was of specific interest was number 9. There's actually a sunken boat. So that was one of the environmental concerns that we brought up and have turned over to Duke, that would be something that would need to be cleaned up from the Blueway. But otherwise, there's stops and different interest points along the way. So during our tour, we did it with city planning staff, so we kayaked up the river. You can see the number 9 where the wreck is, but you can also see there's some pretty neat architecture with some of the trussels. There's some cool places to stop with boulders. There's this also some historic elements with the mill. There's actually an old dam that you can see, but then also one of the things we looked at is where can you actually put kayak launches in, and a huge part of the existing conditions is looking at the FERC boundary. And so there's a few spots along that boundary that are allowable to put a kayak launch. Unfortunately, there weren't any of those places along with some of the businesses, but the businesses do have some sandy beaches. You can't prevent somebody from doing what they want with their kayak and going up to the business. So you'll see in one of our recommendations is there is future opportunity, but as of right now, we can't provide launches at local businesses except at, and I'll go through some of these recommendations. So this is our Blueway map. You can see at the beginning, looking at the Duke kayak launch is where we'd want to put we thought this was the best place for a fully accessible launch. It has the flattest site, it has the best conditions, and we can get permission from Duke Energy to actually upgrade that launch. And I'll show some images of developing that site a little bit more. And the other place that we specified was actually you can provide and upgrade a launch at River Street Park. We wouldn't want to do it at the existing launch. We'd want to move it to a different place to try to provide a place to come up off the water, but a way to connect over to Old Meck Brewery, where you see in the dotted green line, to try to connect some greenway connections up to the brewery. Also in some orange, we have some places that need to be fixed. Remove the sunken boat, replace Mount Holly boat launch. There is some structures that are failing there, so that would be a future plan. Looking on up the creek, there are some places to stop and look. There are some areas where we do have one business owner that would be interested, if it was possible, to do some stream restoration. One thing we did see moving along the stream is there are lots of opportunities to help rework the stream from years and years of it getting routed out, but that would be a lot of work with some private developers. So just looking at the ones who would want to do that. And then you can see some of the other stops into the future where we'd want to stop at the Muddy River Distillery, Firehawk Brew Pub, and eventually up to Woodlawn Mill if there was opportunity to provide launches. So focusing on what we do want to provide with those 2 launches, I'll show some specific site plans here in just a minute. But looking at doing a launch like some of the types we've shown, where people can come down a ramp that's floatable up and down with the floodplain, but then also looking at this kayak storage area. It's kind of almost like a bike rack for your kayak. You come, put it up, and then you can walk to some of these amenities. So looking at the Duke kayak launch, we feel like we can expand that gravel parking lot, and the reason why I haven't expanded further is we're trying to stay out of the floodway but provide more parking spaces, but also trying to provide ADA access to an accessible dock structure so anyone could get their kayak into the creek or the river. We also looked at providing a kayak storage structure and then connections over to River Street Park and up to OMB with a set of stairs and some landscaping. And then the other proposed project would be at River Street Park. We're actually looking at putting it more towards the playground side at the existing parking lot, trying to take advantage of that existing infrastructure. And it also provided a more easily traveled ADA route down to a concrete landing. But then also that launch, we're putting it in just where the flood zone, FEMA floodway comes in, so it's easier to get permits to come actually down to that line. So that was the closest space we could put the launch. And then coming in with another kayak storage structure and then shelter adjacent to the playground. So this becomes a pretty good stop off the Blueway. And so implementation plan, in the short term, we'd like to add those two projects because we feel like they're the most feasible. And then long term, trying to get kayak launches at the businesses if FERC ever relicenses. And then a lot of these other action items are around providing events and things to bring people to the Blueway and advertise the Blueway. With that, were there any questions on the Blueway feasibility study?
Does council have any questions? Councilman Meadows.
So I saw a chart in there showing some funding. Where does that come from? When does that come into play?
And I think that was the most important piece, is how much does all this cost? So some of it's like some grant opportunities that are laid out in here, in the plan itself. But you know, ballpark for the River Street Park, you're looking at a $600,000 project and about $500,000 for the Dutchman's Creek access area that we lease and do not own. And so that question comes for future budget years, but I think staff would work with others for any opportunities for funding. Because you know, it really put a damper on the whole deal when first meeting, everybody's excited, all the business owners are excited, and Duke's like, you can't do that. And that's just what it is they have a shoreline management plan that classifies it as environmental natural. So I think Nick's team did a great job of looking at opportunities, but just to answer your question, that would be in future funding years, grant dependent.
So you guys mentioned several times businesses along the Blueway. Could you name the current ones and the ones that are coming?
Yeah, so we had a great group on the steering committee. Instead of having a stakeholder group and a steering committee, we just combined it into a steering committee because essentially you're working with Woodlawn Mill. They came up from Greenville, South Carolina. Firehawk Brew Pub was invited to the table, but he was opening a restaurant at the time. Was involved. Muddy River Distillery, certainly involved. Old Mecklenburg Brewery. Those are the ones that were identified along with Key City staff.
Go ahead.
So what's going on at Woodlawn Mill?
So Woodlawn Mill actually was sold years ago, but currently there's an ownership group out of Greenville, South Carolina that has experience revitalizing mills, and that mill's been vacant for 15 years. They're working through the State Historic Preservation Office and the National Park Service for tax credits, because it is a goal of both of those entities to give tax credits through the Woodlawn Mill. They want to see it saved, and they're waiting any day for their go-ahead. So they want to submit plans to the city for 64 Class A loft-style apartments with about 7,500 square feet of commercial space. They do have 4 acres that front Dutchman's Creek there. So, yeah.
Any other questions? Does council wish to take action?
One question.
Okay.
I know that there were some structures that were, shown at River Street Park, and I know there's a possibility we're going to get a, pedestrian bridge, like this young lady's Eagle Scout project. I mean, I guess there'll be room for adjustment once we get to that point if we want to do some of these things.
Yeah, certainly.
So that's going to be a busy area at some point.
Yeah.
So we just need to,
I think our biggest concern of that, if we've had and Mark Jusko's here, but he can attest that we've had flooding events that have completely destroyed our current kayak launches, and having that concrete step system it would provide longevity and ensure that this, wherever it's put, it could sustain all the flooding that goes on there.
Yeah, I think we lost 2 canoe launches, and we just never, the last time, we just said,
Yeah.
and then Duke had, built theirs.
Yeah.
So we just.
And that's one thing to say with the launch what we're proposing at Duke's Kayak area is that we did some research with a company that actually makes these, and they were saying that they'd done some in Pittsburgh, the style that we're looking at that could, I think they said they had like a 30-foot flood or something that was crazy, but they keep that in mind with that design, and that's what we're trying to design to, especially up there at the headwaters of the Catawba. So trying to put something that's more permanent.
Any other questions?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the study.
Okay. Motion by Ms. Shoemaker and second by Christina. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Is Greg doing this one too? Okay, next item is discussion of designing loading and unloading zone on Central Avenue. Oh. Huh? Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Greg.
So this is the wayfinding master plan that was budgeted. This came out of your council retreat in March. You gave specific directions of some things we've talked about for years, like the digital message board signs, the downtown kiosk that Booma was interested in, archway to make the greenway more identifiable over near Caramont's place because it's a little hidden. And so we took that feedback and direction at your retreat, worked with a couple companies, and we found that Buzz Bazell, who had a conflict, couldn't make it tonight, but he has done a great job putting together an awesome plan. I was involved in the plan from 2012, and a lot of people didn't know what wayfinding was then. And it's grown, and you're starting to see more towns do it. But the question, we go back to the May meeting where council chose the watermark logo and this burgundy and gold scheme to match our current gateway entry signs. I think you've seen a lot of consistency in this plan to take, our existing signs that really are undersized for DOT specifications on letter height. That's why you see some of the signs in Cramerton that were just put up in Belmont that are larger than ours. Different review, different admin. But going back, it's a very good plan to highlight all the things that Mount Holly has seen in recent years that weren't around in 2012. We have with Firehawk Brew Pub and Trouse, a couple breweries, and he's done work, Buzz Bazell, all over the nation. And people want water access, and they want to know where restaurants are, and they want to know where breweries and distilleries are. So those were the goals going in. But I wanted to scroll down to some of the areas. Of course, the parking signs will be redone, but really focus in on the message board signs. So this was a suggestion from him. He looked at various sites, spent all day on a Saturday driving around, and whatever happens at this corner, it's very visible. So a digital message board sign for downtown events or whatever the city wants to advertise. Very reminiscent of our gateway entry signs. He took that for inspiration. So you're having the same brand and same messaging. So family video does work. At first, he wasn't sure with all the things going on. And, of course, that would rely on an easement from these 2 property owners. But the North Main Street location was actually recommended in the strategic vision plan. The family video location, or former family video, I should say, is a really important entryway into downtown. And if it works, I think, funding could be provided in future years. The kiosk signs, there's a location, a grassy area in front of Vintage Nest that's perfect because you still have to maintain the 5-foot clearance for ADA. And our sidewalks on South Main are pretty narrow. I mean, there's not a lot of room. That's been vetted as a good location as well. On North Main, there'll be a sign removed in front of Jeff Painter's consulting business there, and that would be a good location for a future kiosk. Of course, this Greenway archway. But that's future years we're going to be doing 8 signs, 8 boulevard larger signs. There was 4 budgeted this year. Found funding for 4 last year. But the cost is broken down for future budget years. If council should want to take on any of these projects, it's certainly something that's we can work with whomever to fabricate them. Get the best price. These are just example prices.
Does council have any questions? Go ahead.
Just a general comment. I like the fact that we are being consistent, that branding. I'll use the example of Times Square. There's lots of signs. You see none of them. I've been in Florida communities where you only have a small amount of signage, and you're able to find your way around, and it sets a tone, a high quality of life that I enjoy. And I think this is going a long way to continuing to kind of present that. You see it on the Greenway. You see it now driving around. I think just adds to what we've been doing already. I like a lot of what we've been doing with the strategic vision plan, coming from our citizens, telling us kind of what they want to see, and staff's doing a great job of finding ways to implement those items.
Thank you.
You need a motion?
What, does council wish to take action?
I'll make a motion.
Councilwoman Shoemaker and Councilman Meadows, seconds. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now it's discussion of designing loading and unloading zone on Central Avenue.
So, I put it in the action agenda form. I mean, we're prepared to offer any technical advice, but we really didn't hear from council as a whole. So in our staff meeting, City Attorney Marie Anders was talking about typically when you do something, take action, you direct the attorney to draft an ordinance for review. And we didn't want to make any assumptions with what council wanted, whether it's 2 space or 1 space, but it seems to be there is a need for an unloading and loading zone, particularly in this area, to benefit all businesses. Now, just wanted to bring that forward and just talk about, I got this on Google Maps pulled up so we can just look right now, but really coming from this business owner having to park on the sidewalk or because these spaces are full, asking for at least 1 space be designated as a unloading zone. We know that parking in downtown is a premium, but we also know that if people can't find a place to park, we've all seen people park on the sidewalk and pull up on the curb and park in the middle of the street and block traffic. So the general consensus is staff is ready to take your direction tonight and move forward. If we need signage, if we need striping, if we need a time limit, it's all across the board. We've seen 10, 15, 30. But typically, if somebody's running a business, probably a 30-minute limit would be appropriate if they're trying to run the business as well. A lot of these shop owners are one-person shows. So happy to take any questions and feedback, and I know the city attorney's here for any legal questions.
Councilmember Moore.
I know that there's a problem there at the cleaners and with that situation, and I don't know if we want to do 1 spot or 2 spots, but also at down at Charlie's Drugs, there's a lot of older folks that have to go in there and get their medicine, and that's another place that we should consider possibly having some of those signs for people to be able to go in. Most people are not in there more than 15 minutes when they go in, but you've got a lot of people that are elderly and they just need to be able to pull up and get out and get their prescription and they go back to the car. So that's just another spot that we need to truly look at, see if we can do something there.
Councilmember Meadows.
The thought I just had was instead of necessarily making this a permanent loading zone, because the thought that I had before Councilmember Moore raised that is, how many other spots do you need to do the same thing for or at? I mean, the way our downtown's laid out, you could wipe out a good bit of our parking downtown with this concept when we've only got a handful. It's teaser parking. It's not intended to be standard parking. So the thought that I had was, is there a way to maybe create a handful, maybe a test pilot program, something like that, where you limit the number of minutes one can park there, make it 15-minute parking, or whatever you think's right. So that way I can't just put my car there and leave it. That way it encourages people to come and go. And there's an ability to enforce is an idea that just crossed my mind. So I don't know if that works. Kind of doesn't restrict it to loading zone all the time, Yeah, and it limits the time, so I need to get in and get out, and I can't just leave the space covered for hours on end.
Yeah. Yeah, and we could, like, if you want to look at these couple spaces and put, like, 15 minutes and see how it works, obviously, if somebody's parked, it's going to be a complaint basis, and then we'll have to coordinate with our police department, particularly on an educational level, maybe put it out in the newsletter. But
the other thing we've talked about, sorry.
No, go ahead.
The other thing we've talked about several times is we have so few in the public parking, and there's really no way to designate the handicap parking, but this may be a way to get at that to some degree as well, and that if you make it a 30-minute stop, that trip I'm trying to make, go pay my insurance, pick up my prescription, and that it might get at that without having it tied up all the time. So that's another idea. I don't know how any of these work, but it just strikes me that if you're going to do something, we talk about this all the time on public policy, it's difficult to do something for an individual business, even though that one brought it up. Generally, you want to provide a policy that serves the whole, and we've had numbers of issues come up around this that we've had to talk about several times. So we might be able to craft something here that gets at several items all at the same time.
So do you want staff to look in? Oh, go ahead, Marie.
I just wanted to say I appreciate that feedback, and this is the reason why staff came to council for direction on this matter. I'd say that there are a number of options to consider, multiple locations for loading, unloading, maybe loading, unloading during certain times of day. Maybe at night it's not as important when these businesses typically are open during the day. I'd say we could look at the time period of the businesses. What would be helpful, I think, for staff would be what areas would you like staff to look at targeting for this? Do you have appetite for this? Staff doesn't want to move forward with spending a lot of time in looking into it if council's not interested. So just your feedback tonight is very helpful.
Go ahead, Jeff.
You've got a business owner that's asked for it. Councilmember Moore has actually pointed out an area that we know a lot of people frequent. The other that we hear a lot about is down by the insurance, down that way. So on the other end, closer to Facilios down that way, something in that area potentially might make sense. So it feels like just off the hip, 3 or 4 of these with some signage and maybe some painting. I don't have a real good feel on what the right timing is. I know I saw 15, 30, and I do know that if you go to like downtown Charlotte, for example, they do have a time frame that the paid parking, it's not what we're talking about here at this point, but there's a period of time that after a certain time it no longer applies. So, I mean, it does feel like during, I don't know if that's 8 to 6 or whatever the right time frames are, that there would be some restriction that would be enforceable is kind of what I'm hearing discussed. It seems to make sense.
Yeah.
We might be kind of there. But I do know that the parking is precious downtown, and trips vary, right? I mean, depending on what they are, how long I need to be there. I mean, it's not necessarily designed for me to go shopping downtown and hit every shop and walk around all day. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about being able to get in, get what I need done, and get out. I think that's what Councilman Moore was raising as well with the drugstore.
Yeah.
I don't know if
Yeah.
that helps.
We could definitely do some research, and keep you advised on weekly updates, but I think looking at what some other towns are doing in terms of their downtown parking, because we're all facing those same challenges. So it'd be helpful to see if area towns have parking issues and how they've handled it, and then come back at a future council meeting and present some options.
Councilmember Moore.
Mr. Bill, if you could back that up just a little bit, back down Central, go back the other way, like near Rab Flores there.
Okay, yeah.
There's a company there, I think that's maybe upstairs, and they have multiple vehicles that it's a cleaning service, and they just leave them sitting there like all weekend.
Oh, okay.
And that's something we need to maybe look at too. I know there's a back parking lot, but I don't know if they have availability to that, or they're able to park back there. But when you have 2 or 3 cars just sitting there all weekend long waiting for money to be here, that's something we need to maybe try to look at to do something different, for that.
Go ahead, Jeff.
It's not uncommon when you get into other cities to have what they call no standing overnight.
Yeah.
So that might be something we could explore for all the parking downtown. And that, you know, I mean, I was just in Pennsylvania, and you parked, you got a ticket, the check card had to be gone by 6 in the morning. Of course, I wasn't around that long, but you get the idea is that, you know, I can't, even if I'm paying for the parking, I can't keep that space forever. So I would think that that's not what this parking is designed for, and we've had others that we've talked about. We won't get into the details, but we had to approach somebody else that was permanently parking vehicles in a city lot that we asked them to move it into their own space. The parking's at a premium, and we've had multiple business owners and folks that have challenges that some of us don't, that we ought to consider. I think those are all laudable ideas, and I wouldn't be opposed to the idea of no standing overnight. I think that would be a good, especially on the weekends, that's when that gets used a lot. And we're starting to have a lot more go on after, you know, dark, so to speak.
Yeah.
So
So do we have a consensus with council to let it go back to staff to research? Is that good, Greg?
Yes.
Okay.
That's great, thank you.
Okay, now we need a motion to go into closed session. Motion by Christina Polish, second by Lauren Shoemaker. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries.